And Russian President Vladimir Putin launching fresh assaults on Ukraine just hours after a call with President Trump on Friday. Waves of drones and missiles launched towards Kyiv, making up the largest aerial assault since the attacks began more than 3 years ago. President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky having what both had deemed a good call later Friday, which included possible plans on how to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses and possible joint weapons production between the US and Ukraine. This after the US had paused some shipments of military aid to Ukraine. And for more on this, we're going to welcome in our panel today. We're joined this morning by the owner and president of Klink Campaigns and GOP political consultant, Matt Klink. We're also joined by our special guests in studio today, former federal prosecutor Doug Burns, as well as current New York GOP State Committee woman Cherie Murray. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now,
Morning.
The attack that we saw overnight was the first large-scale assault from Russia since the Trump administration said this week that it would withhold some of the air defense missiles and other weapons that the United States had promised to the Ukrainian military. How can we pause aid now, Matt, after we see something so disastrous like what we saw overnight?
Well, it's my understanding that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said that the U.S. stockpile is low. And I mean, look, to be honest, Shannon, Sarah, we have to defend America first. And we have to make sure we have the weaponry in our arsenal just in case. That being said, it's my understanding that the weapons that the Ukrainians need, we actually have plenty of. And hopefully Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth will send those weapons to the Ukraine so that they can defend themselves against continued Russian attacks. But it is frustrating to see Vladimir Putin continue to drag his heels. He is the obstacle to peace at this point, and it's really, really disappointing. And the Ukrainian people are suffering for it.
Absolutely. It's disrespectful in a way to have this call with President Trump, which Putin and him discussed multiple issues on how they're going to tackle this, basically, and then he described it as no progress towards a ceasefire during that phone call. It doesn't seem like Putin wants the war to end, does it, Doug?
No, the president's very, very frustrated, Sarah, because he felt that he could have, a good shot at ending it and, good inroads in talking to Vladimir Putin. And so he's very, very disappointed. And then, of course, the key issue on the weapons is whether or not, A, the stockpiles are low, or B, we have plenty to offer.
Yeah, and Cherie, what do you make of the timing?
Well, we've definitely seen conflicting results with regards to the stockpile, and we know that we definitely need to raise our arsenal on bombs and bullets. And so, we've also seen President Trump say his recent phone call with Vladimir Putin yielded no results. So it's just interesting that he's pursuing this war after so many years. But we saw what President Trump did with Operation Midnight Hammer, and not suggesting that we're going to get into a conflict with Russia, but they need to really end this war.
Yeah, before it does go down that path.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And Trump also spoke with Volodymyr Zelensky from Ukraine, who then took to Twitter and called the conversation very important and fruitful. And they had a detailed conversation about direct projects with the United States, how they can improve on helping them. I'm going to come to you again, Cherie, on this one. How do you see that playing out with the assistance to, basically bolstering the assistance for Ukraine?
Well, we've supported Ukraine throughout this whole entire process, and I don't, doubt that we'll continue to do so. It's very difficult on the American taxpayers' dollars, right? Because as we just saw with the big, beautiful bill just being passed and the reallocation of our tax dollars to some projects that the president wanted to move forward. But Volodymyr Zelensky has been at odds with the president. As we saw, he was removed from the White House when he was recently here, when he met with the president. And so time will tell. But again, I pray for the soldiers. I pray for on both sides. You know, hopefully this war can come to an end very soon.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the big, beautiful bill, though, this also went ahead yesterday. Trump signing that $3.3 billion piece of legislation. Now, he called it his biggest victory yet. Matt, do you agree?
Oh, 100%, Sarah. I mean, if Trump and the Congress don't pass this bill, Trump's economic plan for his second term, I won't say it's dead, but it would have had a major setback. The passage of this bill it can't be understated. It's so massive. It makes permanent the Trump tax cuts. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, increased border spending, increased military spending, reforms to Medicaid and SNAP. I mean, across the board, it is Trump's entire platform put into legislative writing. And unlike an executive order, this is durable because it has the stamp of approval from the United States Congress. It's been an amazing 2 weeks for Donald Trump, but this is a big cherry on top of an already large sundae.
Yeah, indeed. And Doug, with provisions like no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, where do you see this bill having the most impact when it comes to Americans?
Well, no, as laid out across the board, there's so many different things. Add in the deduction for state and local taxes, very, very important, increasing it from $10,000 to $40,000. All kinds of provisions. But isn't it remarkable, Sarah, what the Democrats have been saying about this? I mean, they really should take a page out of, making a reasonable argument, not a totally unreasonable one, about how, people are going to be kicked off health insurance and grandmothers are going to die. I'm telling you right now, I'm not the political expert in the room, but I don't think that helps them one whit. And I think they should make much more reasonable arguments. They also do not understand, never will, that if you reduce taxes, you can actually increase revenue into the United States Treasury, okay? But where they are effective in their little messaging is that short term, very often the revenues are lower, but then in the long term, due to economic growth, they're up. And by the way, from my world, right, federal prosecution, et cetera, you could have less tax evasion, which can also lead to a lot more revenue.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, indeed. We've got about a minute left, Cherie. The bill gives $150 billion to immigration enforcement. What impact do you think that's going to have on the issue at the border?
Well, President Trump has succeeded on his number one issue, right? We've seen record low numbers in the last several months since he's been elected to office, down to zero entries into the country. But Sarah, just to be frank, the Build Back Better, Biden's bill, has nothing on the big, beautiful bill. And so I do think it's a win for low-income families, middle-income families across the country. And we'll see, if Republicans are able to go out and really champion this issue as we look ahead to the 2026 midterm elections.
Yeah, I think that was people's main concern. I spoke to people yesterday in the streets of New York, and they were concerned about the impact that this is going to have. But I think they're only going to really work out how beneficial it is once it goes into action. Exactly. Anyway, Matt Klink, Doug Burns, Cherie Murray, thank you all so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.